Piercing the cloud of mainstream entertainment. Live from Hollywood, it's Harrison.
You will notice, as a child, you might have seen an airplane take off, and you would have seen a contrail, which is basically frozen bits of ice that come out of the rear end of an airplane, and then they aerosolize and melt and drift away, and there's nothing left. Well, recently, if you, in the last few years, have looked up at the sky, you've seen a grid pattern. You've seen what look like contrails, but they never dissipate. They flatten out and spread out, and you end up with a milky sky. I would suggest to you right now, right here, take the radio with you, please. If you're in the car, crane your head slightly while keeping your eyes planted firmly on the road, and notice the sky is covered in a milky haze, in weird-looking clouds that actually aren't clouds. Plus, you will notice jet trails all over the place. And you're thinking, well, where are these coming from? They aren't coming from LAX. No, they're not. What are they? And that's what we're going to get into today. We're talking about something called Geo-Engineering, or tinkering with the air we breathe, by coating the air with barium and alumina and a variety of other heavy metals. The idea popularly is to reflect the sun's light back into outer space so that global warming becomes mitigated. But much has been going on. A documentary has now been made with every kind of scientist, molecular biologist, high-level, either former or current politician who is willing to talk about this issue, plus the medical effects that many people are suffering here in Los Angeles. Again, look up in the sky today. It is a classic chemtrail day. I want to welcome Michael Murphy. Michael, welcome to Go Harrison, and thank you, by the way, for bringing to light this wonderful documentary.
Well, Harrison, thanks for having me on today. More importantly, thank you for covering the film and also this important issue.
You've done so much backbreaking effort. Put this thing together. It is the ultimate single guide to what this is and what one can hopefully do about it.
Well, I think so, and for a long time it was considered to be conspiracy theory. However, we did a scientific investigation. We interviewed many credible scientists, physicians, politicians, even covered some of the congressional hearings on the issue, and now it is not conspiracy theory, it is conspiracy fact. So we're getting a lot of attention. Film has been very effective in waking people up to this crime and also giving this issue credibility. We started the film in San Diego, where Geo-Engineers proposed their models for spraying 10 to 20 million tons of toxic aluminum into the sky for what they said was the stated goal to cool the planet. Of course, when confronted about the ongoing programs, they blatantly denied that these programs have been deployed. However, during our investigation, we found that there is mass contamination, not only of aluminum, but also barium and strontium in the rain and snow. And this is not only here in America, but around the world. And as many people know, aluminum, barium, and strontium is not only very toxic to human health, it's also extremely toxic to ecology, and we're seeing profound changes since the inception of these programs about 10 to 15 years ago.
In your documentary, there are several long-form interviews taking place in Northern California, even out in Hawaii, where people are not able to grow, say, natural vegetables and natural plants anymore because the chemtrail, or the spraying, as this stuff drifts back down to earth, it tends to change the pH of the soil and also embeds the soil with such toxic chemicals that you can only use, what else, but genetically modified seeds now. They're the only things that seem to grow in this, after being affected by these chemtrails.
Well, that's correct. What had begun happening in the second part of our film, up in Northern California, they began to see a die-off of the ecosystems. Trees were dying, amphibians were dying, grass was not growing, so the scientists began taking tests. And again, what they had found in the rain and snow were massive amounts of aluminum, barium, and strontium. Like we said, those substances will make a soil alkaline. So, for instance, in that area, they have seen tremendous changes within the pH, anywhere between 12 to 18 times the normal alkalinity. And if anybody is aware of soil pHs, if a soil pH changes to alkaline, anything that requires an acidic soil will begin to die.
Why in God's name would they spray this? It seems now in all NATO countries, including France and other places, where they're now spotting these things on a daily basis. What is the end game here?
Geoengineers say that they're doing this for the benefit of society, that this is for our own good to block the sun and prevent global warming, but there's a lot of evidence that suggests that it might be, in part, a military operation. There's a military program called the HARP program, which is not only weather modification, but the HARP program can also create earthquakes. And I often bring up the number of earthquakes that we have seen in the past 10 to 15 years, which has been completely on the rise. And ironically, many of those, the U.S. military goes in and occupies those nations, Haiti being one of the examples that I often use. But let's take weather modification as well. There are tremendous benefits to certain individuals within the military that can control the weather. And there's actually a military document called Owning the Weather by 2025. That is an expressed interest of our Air Force here in the U.S.
Let's hear a piece of audio from this DVD. What in the world are they spraying? And Mike, can you set this up? David Keith, who is this guy and what's he saying?
Well, David Keith is a geoengineer, and he's funded by our good friend, and I'm joking around, Bill Gates. And he is one of the top geoengineers in the world, and he's essentially selling these programs to the world. He's been outlining various models, one of those being the stratospheric aerosol geoengineering programs, which again includes spraying 10 to 20 million tons of toxic aluminum into our sky.
Aerosol geoengineering looks like it is so cheap that the cost is basically not going to be an issue. That means that implementation decisions will be risk-to-risk decisions. The risk of doing it against the risk of not doing it. And it makes the problem of how we govern it fundamentally harder and different and novel. So I've told you that it's cheap to deliver materials to the stratosphere, and I'm convinced that's true. I don't think that will change. But I think the more we do research, the less easy this will look, the more complicated the environmental effects will look. And that's a good thing, because right now it looks too easy. So I think that if we do more research, we're likely to find out that it's harder and more complicated than we thought, and that the side effects are harder to manage, and that's a healthy outcome that will make it easier to do the management. Of course, the opposite reaction is possible. It's an empirical question, how people will actually react to knowledge about this. Another reaction is to say, if these crazy scientists are so concerned about putting CO2 in the atmosphere, they want to think about these things, then that might actually mean we should be more serious about the risks of CO2 in the atmosphere. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids. And by the way, it's not really a moral hazard. It's more like free riding on our grandkids.
You heard it there. It's a complete disconnect from civil society. You've been able to interview and access such a wide spectrum of people. Tell us who Karen Johnson is and why did you talk to her?
Well, Karen Johnson is a retired senator from Arizona, and she's well aware of the aerosol spraying, the geoengineering issues. She's deeply concerned because one of the things that she's seeing, she's having a mass die-off of the trees on her property, which, of course, there's a good chance that it's related to these programs. But she also spoke to us about why this is not being addressed by the officials who are in office, like Dennis Kucinich did in 2001 in the Space Preservation Act, which essentially was a bill banning space weapons. The word in the programs of chemtrails were specifically mentioned, however, removed before it went to vote. And many people believe that there was extreme coercion. When we went to Washington, D.C., we went to his office and tried to get a comment, however, did not get a response, and he did not contact us, so there was no comment. It appears that the elected officials who do address this get an extreme amount of pressure. So we can't depend on our elected officials to address this. We need to depend on ourselves.
My name is Karen Johnson. I served in the Arizona State Legislature for 12 years. I was in the House for 8 of those years and in the Senate for 4 of those years. When you see a plane fly overhead, there's a trail that leaves the end of that plane, and it goes from one horizon all the way to the other as the plane flies across. And it begins to filter out and cover more and more of the sky in kind of ripples. It widens out and fills the whole sky. I mean, how could anybody think that that was the case? And then to live and to be underneath that and know that whatever is in that is falling down upon you and upon your animals and upon the earth. And, I mean, it's frightening to me. And if people don't start really waking up and facing the fact that we've got people that are doing terrible things to us, and we had better wake up and fight back now. Now.